another thing that kind of got things off to a good start right after taking over Farm Equipment, you introduced the Dealership of the Year program, really within months of owning the magazine. Can you guys talk a little bit about that first Dealership of the Year, why it was important to you to get a program like that going and how it's grown?
Yeah, I can go first, David. We looked at this and noticed that there wasn't any national award or U.S. and Canadian award like this. We thought the best way to get sharing going is to provide benchmarking is doing articles on the very best of the best. And so we acquired that magazine in June of 2004 and already put it on the media kit for 2005. And we just decided, we committed to ourselves we were going to do it. I don't know that Dave and I knew exactly what it was going to look like. We did. I think we collected the submissions probably shortly after you got there with us in April. So it was a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
And the industry responded to it. That we might after the first year, we had the big, titans and the RDOs and everyone. They wanted to participate and they wanted to share what they were doing well. And I'll let Dave talk some more about that. But that was a defining moment in farm equipment history, I think.
Over the years that I was there, those were the stories that I enjoyed most. We set up a panel. First of all, that's how they were chosen. They submitted their application. We compiled the information and we set up a panel of experts from the industry who then did the selection of the dealers of the year. And it was a process because we were kind of defining what we thought should be the criteria. And along the way, the panel of judges helped us redefine it as we moved forward. And we learned a lot just by going through that process to see what set dealers apart, what were important criteria for the selection, and that panel helped us understand the industry much better. And I think that's why it was so important that we did it, because we brought in people, experts from the industry to help us develop that. And I think that was for us the real important part of that is we were going through our learning process and they helped us accelerate it.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those Dealership of the Year stories and interviews, they're always fun, but also are some of the interviews I learned the most from. And I think, other editors who have come along on them probably as well, because it's exposing us to the best of the best. So, we had the criteria there, but now we're learning how they're putting it to use and what sets them apart and really looking at what we should be looking at in every dealer we talk to.
And maybe you should, talk about how the dealers today are now using it to engage and celebrate with their staff and what you've done with the Dealership of the Year alumni. We have an alumni community out of this to talk about those things a little bit, Kim.
Yeah, so it's grown. Next year will be our 20th Dealership of the Year honoree. So we're gathering that stuff now, which is pretty exciting, but it's grown from more than just, the coverage and bringing someone a plaque. We reach out to those alumni for all sorts of things, for feedback on people to nominate, for feedback on coverage that we're doing. We at the Dealership Mind Summit, which we'll get into, I'm sure later, we have a Dealership of the Year panel where we're, opening up to the room to let other dealers pick their brains and ask for information.
I think the story that you did with SN, I think they had shirts made for their whole place, and we've had some where we've gone and they've asked us to present in front of the employees.
Yeah.
So they got all. I mean, that's really cool, and that you're cooking with gas when that happens, right?
Yeah, I have I think Dave, was it when we were at Godfrey in Michigan?
Yeah.
Where they brought the entire, it was a smaller dealership, but they brought everyone in the building into the showroom, and we weren't really prepared to make a formal presentation, but Dave did a nice job with it. And, I mean, it was clear it means something to everyone in the building. And they're excited to share, the Hudson, who was this year's dealership of the year, or one of them, they had the cover of the magazine framed to hang in every single store. So they've got 30 stores, 31 stores, and they requested that many copies just to hang it on the wall.
That's cool.
So it's fun to hear those stories, to know that it's meaningful to the people receiving the recognition. If you look at the Dealership of the Year program over the last 19 years, how we've divided the two, there's two generally, I wasn't here for that first one, but it wasn't. Right now we're dividing it by over $100 million in revenue and under $100 million in revenue. And
Which probably also needs to be
it needs to
adjusted.
be adjusted again. When I started, it was 50 million. We bumped it to 75, but it was something before it was that 50 million breakdown too. So it's.
And Dave's, I think both what you're saying is right on. And in fact, we had 2 dealers of the year who merged together, with Prairie Land and Agrivision. Yeah. So we had 2 that, two of our dealerships a year came and made a great super dealer as a result.
The first year or two, we actually broke it down by small dealership, big dealership, based on the number of stores that they had. That's how we originally did it. And then as it grew, and the judges would say, well, this isn't a very good criteria anymore. We got to start looking at sales dollars. And so that changed. And you're right, Kim, I think when we first went to, sales dollars as a criteria for breaking down the categories, it was probably under 25 million and over 25 million. And now, like you say, it's 100 million is nothing unusual. Back then it was that would be very unusual.
Right now we've got dealers, multiple dealers, maybe several dealers that are hitting that $1 billion mark.
Yep. Anyway,
While we've been on this Dealership of the Year topic, any good stories from just your travels that you guys have gone on? I mean, I know I've got some of my own Dealership of the Year travel horror stories or positive stories. I
have one that tested my will, I guess. So we were that first year, Dave was doing Jamestown. It was Jamestown Implement, right, Dave?
that's right.
And I was doing Fred Haar Company. They're both John Deere dealerships in the Dakotas. And I was really excited about this trip and had all my camera gear and notebooks, and I was all ready for action, and drove down to O'Hare to fly out. And of course, there were 3 flight delays. And then I had to go up overnight, and I called the people at Fred Haar, and they said, we're going out of the country on a vacation for 2.5 weeks. Yeah, you're going to have to get us today if you want to do this. We had a very tight window between the Dealership of the Year cover story. I did get out there. It was in the Sioux Falls, I think, and I rented a car and burned rubber, because what happened is I had 90 minutes to do what I had planned to do in a day and a half. And luckily we were in contact with them, or they were ready when I got there, but they gave me 90 minutes to get a full company story. And they were going out of town. I couldn't even do phone interviews with them. They went out of the country on vacation, that's father and son. And it was an all-out sprint. It's probably not the best article that I ever wrote, but it was kind of a test of endurance, kind of like going on the road and sharing a room with Dave. You learn a little bit about yourself in these things. And I think it came out together. But that one was a big test. And when you introduce something new like we were doing, it couldn't be half-assed. I mean, to make the statement we wanted to make, and so there was some pressure. That would be a story that immediately comes to mind on that.
And in that first visit to Jamestown Implement, I think the general manager's name was Roger Nelson. And I'll tell you, I learned more from that guy in about 2 hours than I had learned up to that point working for farm equipment. And one of the things I remember him telling me was when he took over the dealership, the staff there were pinching every penny, and every time a customer wanted something, beyond the normal, they would say, no, it costs too much. And Roger said he had to teach them that you can't be successful and profitable simply by saving money, and that always stuck with me, that if you want to be profitable, you've got to invest in the customer. And that's one of the things that stuck with me. And that's just one example of how we learned what dealerships were all about, were people like him. And that was a great visit.
We had some great experiences on those trips. That's where I got to know David Meyer and Peter Christensen from Titan. Dave had been out there before, but it was the year they won the Dealer of the Year was the first time I was out there. And so I kind of feel like Dave and I, and you, Kim, you've seen a lot of growth in your time, but I feel like it was a front row seat to a huge industry change with Titan. When, like David said, that they were a small organization when they got Dealership of the Year, and everything that happened there was we were in their camp too. We were in their circle. They included us in things, in private events like their employee pheasant hunt, and they brought dealer peers in when they rang the bell on NASDAQ. They asked Dave and I to join them, which was a great experience. And that Dealership of the Year just exposed us to so many great companies. And for me as a small business owner, it felt like free consulting. I'd hear what they were doing, how they were doing it. Totally different business, but every time I came back, I felt like I got something else dropped in my toolkit from those experiences. And very fortunate to do that.
It does feel like those Dealership of the Year visits, it's not we're there, we write the story and we're done. These dealers are people who have become friends. Don Van Houweling has told me, Kim, you're my buddy. Let me know what you need. And that's not something I expected, when I started to have someone I was talking
in
to.
every industry.
Yeah. Right.
And I do think that's unique. I don't think that we've all covered other businesses and all had good experiences, I'm sure, but there's something unique about this farm equipment.
Yeah. It's been so, they're people we know we can go to tell us how it is, and trust us, but also, they're friends, and that's been very cool.
For me, the like I mentioned earlier, the Dealership of the Year I always enjoyed immensely, because we got into those stories so deeply, and when you do that, you tend to create relationships that stay with you for a long time. And I always like the forecasts and trends too, because that showed us what the dealers were thinking, what was important to them, and that helped guide us and how we did our jobs by determining what was important to our readers. I can't think of one particular article that stands out for me, but as a group, it was the Dealership of the Year and the Forecast and Trends report that we did.
I have one to offer up for you that you might be forgetting about. Dave did a big piece on 5 years later, after the Walterman Implement fiasco, bankruptcy and scandal. And it was a great piece. And it was a brilliant piece of journalism. But the other part of the story was that the stakeholders didn't want the story told and unearthed again. And I do remember a conference call that Dave and I and David Meyer of Titan, he was getting some pressure to kill this story and not reopen the wound. Even though Titan Machinery saved the situation, the Case IH people did not want this story being told and unearthed again, and any finger pointing back at the major over this. And we hung tight and said, we do need to do this. And I think at the end, David Meyer, I think he did realize that it was good to remind this, and you did it in a responsible way. But I thought that was a great story, and a story no one else was telling.
Yeah, Mike, over 15 plus years, it seems some days I wonder how many words I wrote over my 40-some year history, but that was a good one. But as a group, just as a general, it was the dealership of the year because it really that allowed us to really dig into the whole dealership operation. And again, the forecast and trends report, I think it's 64 pages, Kim. Mm-hmm. And that provided so much detail that, every one of them was a learning experience for me. So I think that's why I assigned so much value to it. It was great information for the industry and a good learning experience for me. I learned something from every one of those that I did. The dealership of the year and the forecast and trends report.
What about you, Mike?
I love the dealership of the year project like Dave did. I'd say some of the other ones were we started doing some executive interviews where we went to the majors and we asked tough questions of them, and some of them chose not to participate again in the future, one in particular. But I would say some of those assignments where we did stick our neck out and covered some hard and maybe courageous topics for us to get into, and push them till they answered the questions. We did that on several occasions. I think some of what we did was showed real leadership during that time of a lot of contract terminations, mm-hmm. and some of the language that was going into new contracts that we brought out into the open, and we were not necessarily popular with the manufacturers over it, but I think that the industry responded, and we would get comments and off the record comments. Thank you so much for doing this. That they need to know where this is and where it stands. And I think that might be some of the stuff I'm proudest of, is where we purposely rattled the cage a little bit, made sure people knew what was going on out there.